Hello, it's lovely to see you here again, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. Before I get into today's topic, which is how to speak up in meetings with senior leaders, I wanted to be sure that you knew that I offer free, yes, free, confident communication coaching sessions. Now, yes, it's free, so that means there is a catch, but I think it's actually quite a nice catch. It's just simply that the podcast, that our conversation, that our coaching session gets released as a podcast episode. Why do I do this? Because I'm a really big fan of working out loud, and whatever challenge you're going through, somebody else is. And when we can dig into the real life, other people learn as well. In fact, you can see this in a recent episode 177, Sales Conversations That Feel Fabulous, with Caitlin, who is a small business owner, and she wanted some tips and some insights into how literally to have sales conversations that didn't feel so icky, which was her biggest challenge. So if you have any speaking challenge, and you've kind of been listening to these episodes for a while thinking, you know what, I'd really like a coaching session with Kat, this is how you can do it for free. The link to my TidyCal, to literally the calendar, you book it in, you can see my availability right here, right now. You just book it in. We have a half-hour conversation. It is a no-holds-barred, gentle, safe coaching session. You get everything that you need to speak with greater confidence and authority, authenticity, and impact. And I get a podcast episode. Win-win. So if you're keen, just check out the link in the show notes. And welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. That would be me. That would be me. And it's on this show that I coach humble leaders, impact-minded humble leaders just like you, how to speak up, show up, and speak with authority, with authenticity, with confidence, and with impact, so you can make your desired dent in the universe. And today we're talking about how to speak up how to speak up in meetings with senior leaders. Now, if you're a small business owner and you've tuned in, I still think there'll be value in this, okay? Like if you're dealing with more senior stakeholders, if you're sitting as part of an advisory board and you've got that awkward kind of, can I speak up here? This episode is for you as well. Because again, this episode comes from repeated challenges that I hear from my listeners and from my clients around what they struggle with when it comes to being heard. And knowing both how to speak up when there's senior leaders present, whether you're applying for a senior role, so you've got a senior leader panel, or just how to make yourself heard in a meeting with senior leaders, and how to overcome those nerves of thinking, I don't have anything to say here, or I do have something to say here, but they're going to think I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a senior there, blah, 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 blah. God, we make up some stuff. Good grief, we make up some stuff around why we shouldn't speak up. So this is a common theme and I wanted to address it. Now, I also want to acknowledge that I have been on multiple sides of this equation. So I have held senior roles in the public sector. I have sat in roles where I was 4 levels from the CEO. I have managed my own teams, and in fact, my most senior role was when I was 3rd from the CEO and I managed a team of 40. So I had quite a large number of direct reports that I needed to manage. So I have been both the senior leader receiving information from my direct reports as well as being the person needing to speak up. I've also, in those roles, particularly in the public sector, I've also needed to advise and speak to advisors, like political advisors, policy advisors, the politicians themselves, all which come with a degree of there's some rules and there's some protocols, and there is also just straight out, I don't know, social norms around how to be heard in those environments. So when I talk about this, I'm not reading from a textbook. It's coming from lived experience. So the first piece I want to say about this particular topic is recognize what senior leaders need when they're asking for information from you. Now, Senior leaders in most organizations are already managing and dealing and receiving information by firehose. By firehose. If you look at a senior leader's calendar, they are often in back-to-back meetings 7 days a week. They're often responding to emails, etc., while they're in those meetings. They've got a good EA often who is filtering information. They are dealing with information by firehose. And so senior leaders are often needing to filter the information that they're receiving to either pass further up the line or to make decisions. So every single time you are in a meeting with senior leaders, you need to keep this in mind, and you need to be really present to, well, what information do I have that's going to add value in this context? Because I know one of the mistakes that I used to make, and in hindsight, I can completely see how my general manager and my CEO would have found this so frustrating. I had an opinion about everything. And in my mind, my opinion was very valid and it was very important. And I wanted to explain my opinion and why I thought what I thought. And that level of detail and rambling and storytelling and what if and sometimes uninformed opinion just adds to the noise. It just adds to the noise. And if you're a senior leader who's already tired, who's already trying to kind of thread the needle between what's important, what's not important, what's relevant, what's not irrelevant, what's a risk, what's not a risk, then that noise, not only is it frustrating, but the risk you take when and I learned this the hard way, the risk you take when you share all of that is that you actually become less desirable to have in those conversations because you're not known for contributing, you're known for adding noise. You're known for being a troublemaker. Now, there's a distinction here between being a troublemaker who is standing up for what needs to happen and a troublemaker who's just sharing her opinions for the sake of them. So the first thing I want to be really clear, this is not about not standing up for what you believe in. It's about standing up for what you believe in a way that can help the conversation, that can contribute to the conversation. Because when you just add noise, then when you do have something good to say, you've got less authority to say it. Sad, but true. So coming back to recognising what senior leaders need, if they're receiving information by firehose, if they need to make decisions with that information or they need to inform decisions further up the line, what do they need? They need top-level information. Top-level information that they can easily repeat. I used to say it's putting words in my senior leader's mouth, and I don't mean that to sound condescending, but if I'm using words or jargon or insights that I understand but then they have to interpret, it makes it harder for them to pass it on. But if I can summarise a key point, if I can summarise a core conclusion, if I can articulate a risk in a way that they can literally just repeat, then it makes it so much easier for them to pass that up the line, for them to contribute that to the decision. So think about the top level information that you can pass on rather than all of the detail. They'll come back and ask you if they need more detail. Tell me how you came to this conclusion. Tell me, do we have any data on that? Do we have any stats? They'll ask for that. But when you deliver an informed opinion or an insight at top level that adds value, they'll appreciate that so much more. Coming back to this informed or expert opinion, and I was mentioning that I just had an opinion about everything and sometimes it wasn't necessarily informed. This is not an invitation for you to go and get more training or expertise, but when you do have an informed opinion, when you've done the research, when it comes from your line of experience, when it comes from your technical expertise, signal what you're saying with those credibility markers. Lead with credibility markers. So rather than, for example, I think we should do this, you could say something like, our customer service surveys are telling us X, Y, and Z. That leads me to believe that we could do X. Connecting where your opinion is coming from with either third-party credibility or with research or with insight will really help. Another credibility marker can come from where you've done this previously. The last time we rolled out a project like this, we learned X, Y, and Z. What I'm proposing this time is A, B, and C. Leading with credibility markers will show that you haven't just thought it up today, that it's not in direct reaction to what else is going on at the conversation. And it makes it more credible. It makes it more credible. So think about the credibility markers that you can use. The final piece that I want to say on speaking up in meetings with senior leaders is think through the essence of what you want to say before you open your mouth. Now, I find this ridiculously challenging because I am a verbal processor. I think out loud. And oftentimes my conclusions or my thoughts will be drawn in the dialogue. If that's the case, then I will say, can I just think out loud with you for a couple of moments? Can we just bounce a couple of ideas? And that signals that I'm not delivering an opinion. I'm literally just working through some options. But oftentimes when you're just delivering a contribution, you want to think through first what it is that you want to say. And this is not about the words. This is about the essence of what you want to say. I see so many times that people get caught up and they get tangled in the words because they want to say the exact precise right thing. And that's what trips them up. Whereas if you think through the essence might be, my recommendation is that we try a new sales process for 3 months and see what happens. And these would be the key metrics that we would use to determine whether it's worked or not. And if that's the essence, then you can bounce that back and forward a few times when people say, oh, tell me more about what you mean by a new sales process. Okay, tell me more about these metrics. And so you're not getting stuck in the words, you're focusing on the essence. I also find then too that when we're focusing on the essence of what we're trying to say, when we're focusing on the essence of our message, we're a bit more calm. We're not so nervous. Because of course, if we feel like we're under pressure, then our body goes into fight or flight and we freeze and we lose our words and we start to ramble and all of the things that we don't want. I think the other thing that is important to remember in these contexts, because oftentimes it's quite possible that you're listening and going, yeah, well, that's all good and well, Kat, but I will often say something and it gets ignored, and then 2 minutes later somebody else will say exact same thing and everybody go, oh, that's a fantastic idea. As much as that sucks in the moment, and it does, because it's just like, oh man, the question that I always asked myself in those situations was, does it matter? Does it matter if I got the credit for the idea? Now, there is some really fascinating research around why that occurs. Some of it's to do with our biological, neurological biases. Some of it's to do with how we process information. And without going into the detail, how I think of this now is if I say something in a meeting and it gets ignored, but then a couple of minutes later somebody else says the exact same thing, what I recognise is that actually it wasn't ignored. It got taken on and it's kind of just doing its thing in people's minds. And if somebody else is then saying it, then it landed. It settled. And as they've processed it, as they've absorbed it, it's then come out of their mouth. And if it was a good idea and if it moves us forward, then I'm not overly concerned that somebody else said it. and got the credit. Now, if I am in a situation where I'm feeling very invisible and I feel like my career progress is suffering as a result, then what I might want to do in that situation is say, exactly. And in fact, I'd like to build on that because I've been thinking about this for a bit. And so it's not about being credited with the idea. It's about building and demonstrating yourself to be someone who has expertise and knowledge, etc. And invariably people will notice and go, oh, actually, you just said that, didn't you? Yeah, that's right. When we get defensive about somebody else stealing our idea, that's when it goes pear-shaped, because that's when our hackles go up. That's when we move into a fight response. And we're no longer contributing to the conversation. We're fighting for our own visibility. And what I do know for sure, having spent many years in various rooms, is that when you're fighting for visibility, that gets felt. And that's a very different energy to contributing to the conversation, male or female. Like, that's just, people feel that. So when you're contributing to the conversation, that will have far better long-term outcome than any momentary credit for an idea. So they're my ideas around, well, my experiences around how to be heard and how to speak up in meetings with senior leaders. I would love to know whether this resonated and whether there's other situations, or whether you're actually a little bit perplexed. You're kind of sitting there going, yeah, but Kat, I want credit. Like, I'm really getting tired of being ignored and by the blokes getting all the credit for the stuff that I say. I would love to hear more. So to do that, if you're listening on Spotify, you can literally just comment below. Just comment below and I will see that comment. Alternatively, if you would prefer to message me in private, then do that over on Instagram at Kat Matson. That's CATMATSON. The link to my Instagram is in the show notes. But yeah, just message me and let's continue the conversation. There's a whole lot of reasons why I want to continue this conversation. One, because it's a really important one. We need more diverse voices contributing to the conversations that matter and to the decisions that are being made in all sorts of different contexts. And this is not always easy stuff. I would also say that the common everyday reaction to it, of getting shitty, of getting annoyed, of fighting back, of being assertive, that doesn't work. And yelling in all our different forms that women are not heard is also not going to work either. And so I really do want to continue these conversations so that we can all show up authentically in a way that feels good to us and be heard without trying to fight hundreds of thousands of years of biological evolution and hundreds of years of societal programming. Because let's face it, we don't have the energy for that. So yeah, please just message me at Kat Matson. A reminder that if you would like a free coaching session, you just need to click on the calendar link in the show notes for a confident communication coaching session. And it's free so long as I can use it for a podcast episode. And that's enough for one session. I look forward to seeing you again next week on the podcast. If you have enjoyed this, please rate it, leave a comment, leave a review, or simply follow or subscribe to signal to the algorithm that other people like you should be listening to this as well. It would help me immensely. And until I see you next week, here's to confidence and here's to impact.